Welcome back to the 3-Hour News Show. You're watching See the Stories. And, we have, sometimes in life we have to make decisions, a lot of decisions in life, right? But have you ever made a wrong decision, which, well, not very, very rare. It often, leading to a different problem, other problems, and then blamed external factors. Maybe it's not the external factors, maybe it's not somebody else or other people who did the fault, but
it's the easy way out, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe it's us. Maybe it's us. I mean, maybe we were not that careful enough to think before making the right decision. Have you had that? Well, I did kind of, yes.
For me, making the wrong decision, definitely. But I'm usually, I've learned in the maturing journey that if you make the wrong decision, it's only about whether you can own up to that decision that you've made or not, and how you can fix the problem.
And I think that should come in the very first place. I mean, you already know that there are risks, right?
Yeah.
And you have to own the risk as well.
Because I feel like if we overthink everything in the beginning, it's very difficult to actually be able to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah. And make the decision.
Yeah, exactly. So how important is thinking and making our lives easier and happier? And we have two authors here in the studio who have just released a collaborative work titled Makanya, Mikir, which translates to So Think. Please welcome Abigail Limuria and Cania Citta to the studio. Hi,
welcome,
Cania and Abigail.
Hello. Yeah, it's great to have you.
Thank you for having us.
So the book is very provoking. It's red.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Because I said very early in the show, I am one who's always triggered when somebody tells me this
title or
especially this phrase.
When somebody says
Mikir,
somebody has told you that.
Think
a lot.
A lot.
Okay.
Because people seem to think I don't think.
Exactly, almost the same. I'm an overthinker, so when people say that to me, I'm like, haven't I finished thinking yet, or what? Enough thinking or not yet? But anyway, it looks very interesting. I just flipped through the pages and tell us first. I mean, big congratulations. But could you tell us about the concept? Why this collaborative work, and why is it so mikir, so think? Why is that?
Yeah.
Is there any concern or something
you want to
like
go?
that? Yeah.
Okay. So the title is meant to be provocative. Yeah. Because I think for people to want to read this, they need to be interested first. We need to pique their interest, and one of it is actually through making it the title quite provocative. And we actually did several surveys with our audience about which title they prefer, and this title wins, keep on winning, 3-4 times we did it. And I think what you mentioned, right? It's a universal experience that us Indonesians have experienced, this phrase, one variation or another.
We love saying it to other people, but we hate hearing it when somebody says it to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have selective hearing when it comes to it. So why don't you think?
Well, and for me and Cania, we often say it to ourselves too. When we make...
That's the beginning of this book.
Yeah, exactly. So when we make the wrong decision due to our own mistakes and biases, we often Cania mikir, that. That's a very Indonesian universal experience, I think. So that's maybe the concept behind the title. But the book itself is actually a collection of mental models that me and Cania have collected, modified, and curated over the years through our experiences. And we find very helpful in day-to-day decision-making, actually. So it's as simple as that. That's why the subtitle is Panduan Berpikir untuk Hidup, Lebih, Bahagia.
It's a guideline for an easier life.
But I find it really interesting because to be happy, you need to think. No, because a lot of people, we hear verses like carpe diem, you don't think you go, and things like that a lot. And so you mentioned mental models, right? So what are these mental models that you mentioned, and how did you two sit down and, because not everybody collects mental models,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What was the reason that made you feel like, is it like you have to structure your thinking, or is it like people just underestimate, or just, too random, or why is it so important, this thinking in a model?
It's just that we have natural tendency to think using emotions, think and making decisions using emotions instead of rational thinking, So what we're trying to tell here through our book is that let's built a habit of pausing judgment and decision and try to think further before take actions. But that was this interesting thought that you had before about people may question like whether we need to think to be happy. Right? People may think that, don't you think that we should not think to be happy? Because happiness is a feeling, right? Like you need to not think to feel, right? Maybe people think so. But then I would like to point out that we need to learn the difference between fun and happy, between, you know, having fun and achieving happy and fulfilling life.
That's true.
Those two are very different. And in terms of achieving a fulfilling and happy life, you actually need to think. Because sometimes when you make decisions just because it sounds fun or it sounds, you know, like it sounds exciting out of your adrenaline rush or something, you can actually ruin your entire life.
Yeah, unless you're lucky.
Yeah, right? I think that's what's been happening to a lot of, let's say, youth, you know, like when you're a teenager, maybe you made some kind of decisions that actually defined the course of your
So
life.
you cannot go where the wind blows.
But my question is like, why do you think there is a market for this? Why do you think it's important the younger to be able to know this? Because what I extract from what you said just now is a lot of people actually do things without thinking about the consequences because we never know. If we don't think, we don't actually think about the consequences, right?
Yeah.
So where or what cases do you see that would really help
The youngsters.
the youngsters especially having a guide like this?
Oh my gosh, like so many in all sectors of your life. So me and Cania, we are very active online, right? And so we interacted with a lot of our audiences, and oftentimes we get questions like
In our
Instagram or when we, for example, speak and meet with communities and things like, we would hear questions as simple as like, what major should I take? I'm so confused about
that's
that.
the big
Or for
question.
example, you know, like I've been in this very toxic relationship for like 3 years. Do you think I should break up with him? Do you think I should continue?
Yeah, or they're in between of two choices of people, you know, like I
Yeah.
have these two guys that I'm close to.
Yeah.
You know,
All right.
then-
Well, at least they have
I
options,
love that.
right?
Yeah.
Because you girls would go like, yeah, think.
So things as simple and as day to day as that.
Yeah.
It's a very, it's actually something that you need to know first and foremost, like what is your objective, right? What is it that you're trying to get? And then you need to understand the concept of cost and benefit, where you can weigh your options. Like whether this option, what are the cost and benefit? And in this cost and benefit, there are different values, different probabilities and risks associated. So those are all frameworks and mental models actually they're associated. And so with them learning these fundamentals, they're able to answer very, very basic day-to-day decisions that maybe a lot of people are having dilemmas over. And that is just like the day-to-day example, right? When you extract it, for example, to the more abstract or the more
Cannot be quantified, for example.
complicated one, for example, when you want to have an online discourse about public policy, or you wanted to you wanted to understand this paper that you're reading, and you wanted to have a very fruitful discussion or debate with your peers in the university level, like those all requires the fundamentals of thinking.
Yeah.
Okay,
like
that's very interesting. Yeah, I kind of saw your tables of the cost and benefits and things like that. So, how easy is that to apply? I mean, how can the readers apply the various critical thinking? I mean, some people might think, I'm not that scientific, so I don't need, critical thinking. I don't need this scientific thinking. But how can they, as a guideline, how can they, try to implement that easily?
Yeah, I think Cania can like elaborate on this, but maybe before that, I'll just add how, like it or not, I think even people, those who say like, oh, I don't think, I just act on my gut instinct or like what I feel. But that in itself is a mental model that you abide by.
Do what the Twitter says, like something.
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
That's why I feel so offended when people say that you didn't think it through. It's like, of course I thought
It's
it
a
through.
form of thinking. So everyone,
Something,
whether they
yeah.
realize it or not, are thinking every day and are abiding to a certain mental model in decision making.
Yeah.
The question is this mental mental model, the most effective one in making this type of decisions, right?
So we're just trying to give references actually here. When people say that I'm not that scientific of a person, you know, sometimes what they meant is maybe they think scientific in terms of, you know, scientific journals, that you need to have data in everything that you do. But actually what we're trying to point out in our cost-benefit analysis framework, for example, we actually kind of trying to demonstrate that in making decision using reasoning, using rationality, you actually need a lot of feeling as well. Because at the end of the day, it comes to what you need and what you want, actually. These frameworks that we are using here are just tools to get what you want, but these frameworks cannot tell you what you want. So you need to actually be very self-aware of, you know, what makes you happy, what makes you unhappy, you know, what you like and what you dislike, to be able to use these frameworks. So what I'm trying to say is that these are not dichotomy, right? This thinking and feeling, because you actually need to feel, to weigh in all these things, like how they value, how they matter to you. We cannot tell you.
Because the value is the feeling, right?
Exactly.
It's really interesting because I feel like the kind of questions that you receive in your social media is that people think, as you've mentioned before, I'm not a very scientific thinker, but then do you not make personal decisions on a daily basis, right? So it's like how do you, as a maturing person, make a personal decision for yourself or for the people around you that you perhaps have to make decisions for, without help? Because not all people do have this systematic or, you know, in a rational whatever model or framework of thinking. And it does help, but when is overthinking versus thinking efficiently? What's the red line there?
Actually, I think we kind of, the beginning of the first framework, for example, the objective-oriented principle, actually we're trying to respond to people who are overthinking, you know, of their own questions. Because they keep asking us these things, right, that Abby has mentioned before, on what major should they take, and then whether or not they should end their relationships, etc. It's actually them being overthinking because they're not starting from the very simple question, which is, what is your objective, right? What do you want from this? Which is actually we're trying to simplify their problem by taking out the essentials. Like the essentials of each decision. There are essentials of each decision that you need to know so that your reasoning into it is actually clear. But what's happening in people's minds is actually a lot more complex than what we're doing in our frameworks because they didn't think of the essentials first, you know, just the objective. So they're thinking, let's say when you're talking about what major should you take, maybe they think about, oh, this celebrity who's taking this major and they're going into this career. But they didn't ask the first question, like, do you want that career? You know, like, it doesn't make sense to think about these celebrities' options when what they're getting is not what you want anyway, you know? So they're actually overthinking precisely because they didn't have the right framework to begin with.
I get it. Because the mind is crowded to begin with, overwhelmed with information. And what you're saying is the framework really helps to set priorities in thought.
That's what we're trying to do, Let's clear the path for you to think, you know? Like, just
I like
actually,
that.
it should be simpler.
That's right. Because overthinkers sometimes they don't see the right fact that is just right in front of them. They're like overthink things that are beyond, right? Okay, so that helps. It should be helping. But we know that you guys you're very active in social media as well, have your own platforms, in fact, for improving critical thinking skills. Abby, you have this What is Up Indonesia and Cania with Malacca project. So how much influence do you think social media has, especially in the way we think, shaping the way we think?
I think significantly because especially like the youth who they call it chronically online, so they basically spend a significant portion of their time online. I think social media really impacted how we organize our thoughts, how we determine what is important, what is not important, what is true, what is false. I think sometimes, for example, people misconstrued what is true as something that is retweeted many times. as opposed to like something that is factually, objectively correct, and something, or for example, somebody who is morally wrong as somebody who a lot of people has canceled, for example, as opposed to thinking what are the actual morality framework that we're judging this person based on, or what are the consequences of their actions, for example.
Yeah,
like
something to consider.
exactly, like for example, in social media, you would often find people canceling and criticizing enormously on, for example, celebrities who cheat, for example. But then when there's a corrupter who actually took their tax money, they're like, oh, I don't care, you know? Even though like when you weigh the consequence, like a celebrity who cheat on their partner, yes, it's bad, but maybe it doesn't really have any negative repercussion to
Impact
us.
yes.
Whereas the corrupter who actually corrupt your tax money, that
Ruining your
impacted
life.
your life
Yeah.
directly. But
Millions of
they feel like, again, like it's morally more reprehensible, the cheater, as opposed to, for example, the corruptor. So things like that. So I think through the interaction of social media and engagement and algorithm, it really muddled up a lot of how we prioritize and how we judge an information. So absolutely. But on the flip side, of course, like through social media, I think a lot of people are exposed to a lot of different perspectives that maybe a lot of them are not prepared for.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that can backfire in them being more defensive and becoming more close-minded. But for a lot, they get to learn and to discover new perspective and to find new friends. I mean, like without social media, me and Cania would not be friends, for example.
Yeah,
You know?
we met online.
Wow. There you go. There's a story.
Yeah, so some couple meet online. This is a
Yeah,
online
friend.
friendship.
You have known the
People have
cost and
more
benefits of
courage
this,
online, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have.
People seem to have more courage online than in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot. It really impacted how we think.
Speaking of critical thinking in social media, and this book in particular, because this is speaking about how to basically design or framework your thinking, right? Do you think the frameworks that you have in this book would benefit young people in terms of building this filter that is necessary to stay sane in a world of, get out of that social media bubble?
I think since we're just getting into the end of our 20s, we kind of use these frameworks navigating our 20s.
Okay.
So
And you
probably,
made it, successfully, right?
Yeah. Well, of course, the one that we put here already based on our experiences, curated as Abby mentioned before.
Yeah.
So these are absolutely the ones that we already, kind of A/B testing here and there, and experimenting here and there, and then we found the conclusion that okay, this is the most effective model. But we also put in a book that this book is not finished, so anyway, it can be corrected, in the future.
Wow.
But for now, I guess if you're asking whether this can be helpful for the youth, I think judging from our experience, it should be.
Yeah, and
because it's coming from our everyday experiences.
Yeah, and I think like staying sane on social media, for example, that's a very specific case that you can apply some of these frameworks that are very, very fundamental to this specific case. For example, right, if you spend day-to-day doom scrolling on social media and you feel really terrible, whereas your goal in life is to be happy, through the objective-oriented principle, for example, you realize that, hey, doom scrolling on social media is not really helping me achieve my goal. And so maybe I should reprioritize my time. And we do have a framework also on how to choose your priority based on your objective and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard when you have to learn it on your own, everything that's in here.
Exactly.
And it helps that there's already a guide to it. And in people's pictures.
Making it easy. With pictures.
And both of you
and
actually
formulas.
thought of this. I like this.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to continue also with See the Stories after a short break, so make sure you stay tuned with us because Cania and Abigail are going to stay in the studio with us.
We're going to play a game as well.